Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Sal the Car Gal, and let's talk about some F1 stuff. Oh my goodness, we've just had the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix and another race week that delivered us some sugar and spice. How exciting was that race? I loved it. It was stressful towards the end for me as a Ferrari fan, but super stoked about the result. The Saudi Arabian Grand Prix takes place at the Jeddah Corniche circuit, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. A track circuit of 50 laps, 27 turns, 3 DRS zones, and is 6.174 kilometres long. My favourite part about this race weekend was, of course, the Ferrari podium, and I was getting a little bit stressed towards the end that it wasn't going to happen because Lando was absolutely flying towards the end there and was picking people off left, right, and centre. So I am super happy that Charles was able to maintain his P3 position and gain Ferrari's first podium of the season. And then, so at my not so fave part, kind of tossing up between two here. My first one, which is after the race, I saw some videos on the internet with Kimi Antonelli being escorted back to Mercedes Hospitality because he looked so exhausted. He was like drenched in sweat and just did not look well. So, and a lot of the comments and my first thought was, oh my God, he's going to struggle in Singapore. And yeah, so that kind of made me a little bit scared. I was just worried for the welfare of the poor lad. But my other not so fave part was it has to be the Max and Oscar lap 1 incident. And I'm going to talk about that in a little while. Let's first of all talk qualifying. So, not really much went on until the very end of qualifying. There was plastic bags floating all over the track. Alonso got a nice tow from Doohan. Max hitting the floor of his car pretty hard on that very specific curb. I'm not sure which turn it is, but the curb is raised a lot higher than the rest, obviously deterring people from driving over the top of it. But to get a good exit from the corner, you got to kind of go over it a little bit. Probably the only thing that was bam crash, mind the pun, exciting that happened was, I mean, not exciting, but Lando hitting the wall and his rear and front left tyre was completely screwed. Like the wishbone sort of suspension from the chassis of the car, or the nose of the car, I should say, nose of the car to the front left tyre was completely crumpled. And yeah, she didn't look good after that. She was not in a good way. And the last kind of point of qualifying was that Max only came in for a pit stop during qualifying between his first and last lap in Q3. He had enough fuel on board because they came out quite late, obviously due to the red flag caused by Lando's crash. So, and he didn't have a time on the board prior to that. I think only Oscar had. So they put enough fuel in his car to do 2 laps and then just change his tyres. And I've never actually seen that happen during a qualifying session before, so that was a little bit different. So how quali turned out was Q1 we had P20 Bortoleto, P19 Ocon, P18 Hulkenberg, P17 Doohan, P16 Stroll. And apparently for Stroll, he's got himself a new record. and not a record that you would want to have, is his 75th Q1 exit in his F1 career, the most out of anyone. And doesn't that just speak volumes? Yep, and I'll leave it at that. So Q2, we have P15, Behrman, P14, Hadjar, P13, Alonso, P12, Lawson, and P11, Albon. First time this season that Lawson has outqualified his teammate. Q3, because of Lando's crash, he didn't get a time on the board and qualified last in the session. So P10 for Norris, P9 Gasly, P8 Tsunoda, P7 Hamilton, P6 Sainz, P5 Antonelli, P4 Leclerc, P3 Russell, P2 Piastri, and P1 Verstappen. Now, can I just pop a spotlight on Gasly? He did really well this weekend, apart from the race. We won't talk about the race. But his results in FP2, I think it was, being top of the session, excellent. And getting into Q3 and securing a P9 is also very good. We're talking about an Alpine here. We're not expecting ginormous results, but P9 for not P9, P1 in a practice session. That's plus FP2 is the most similar to conditions as qualifying, so that would have given him a lot of confidence going into the qualifying session, which props to Gasly. Let's talk about the race. So I think it has to be said, the first thing that we talk about is Max and Oscar's little tiff. So I'm going to throw in my 2 cents here, and I actually think that Max did not deserve that penalty. I think it was a lap 1 incident because, yes, at the previous turn, it looked like Oscar had the apex of the turn. So yes, that was his corner. Yes. Then Max came a little bit forward going into the second corner, and I couldn't really tell who was in front of who at that point, but because of how the previous corner turned out, it looked to me that Oscar couldn't have made that turn because he also had other people coming up behind him, and it forced Max to go off the track and re-enter the track in front of him. But I actually think that Max was ahead. I just think Oscar shoved Max off the track, so forcing another driver off the track, and then Max gained an advantage by exiting the track and gaining advantage. I'm trying to use the technical FIA terms here in terms of the penalties, just to keep it simple. But, like, they cancel out each other, I feel. And I think maybe both of them deserved a penalty, or none of them deserved a penalty, because they both did something wrong, in my opinion. I'm not an FIA steward, and I was not in charge of making those decisions, but I personally think that if Max got a penalty, then Oscar should have as well, or neither of them got a penalty, because they both have valid reasons to back up why they shouldn't, but I don't think there was enough evidence to suggest that they should get a penalty. So yeah, I just think that was a little bit unfair. Then, obviously, the other big thing that happened on lap 1 was Tsunoda and Gasly coming together and then both having to retire. Now, I think Gasly was ahead, and then Tsunoda turned in on him, clipping Gasly's rear tyres, and then causing him to spin and hit the wall. Gasly, definitely retiring from the race. And Tsunoda, I think, he hit the wall. His rear of his car hit the wall, and I think he then went off and continued driving, but went into the pit lane because obviously then this incident caused a safety car. So then people came in for their pit stop. Tsunoda came in, and then they were checking over the car. It really looked like he was then going to get back out there because they had the tyres ready in hand to do the pit stop. But then they were like, yeah, no, this ain't going to happen, buddy. We are donezo. So that was a little bit unfortunate because I think Tsunoda has definitely proven himself as a worthy candidate for that second Red Bull seat, and he has done his job by getting the car into that Q3. But let's move on. So next, Lando and Alex making up 2 spots at the start. Alex being an absolute Sasquatch on the radio. Listening to his radio messages just makes me giggle because it sounds like his engineer is just talking absolute rubbish, and then Alex just like sets him straight, like, come on, mate. What are you saying? That's just what it sounds like. Then the exciting part of Lewis and Lando's battles together. Lando doing the same move twice, and then regretting his decision because he got in front of Lewis just before the DRS detection point for the main DRS straight, and then so Lewis could then just overtake him with the DRS because they were that close together. But then, and he did that twice, and then Lando finally learnt his lesson and changed when he made his overtake, because he was close enough on those 3 laps. He was close enough to stay behind Lewis, get the DRS, or pass the DRS detection point with him being within 1 second behind Lewis, and then made his move on the main straight and then took off because that McLaren is super speedy. But yeah, some of the times he was a little bit late on his brakes and almost rear-ended Lewis. So yeah, but I think Lewis may have been a little bit cheeky in one of them and slowed down quite a lot to force Lando to go around the outside. So then Lewis got the DRS detection, but Lando then learned his lesson. Lawson was making moves on Behrman and Alonso, making some good overtake. Lewis also was complaining that he was sliding a lot, losing the rears because they were overheating. And I think what the commentators were saying is that he's not quite to grips with... don't mind the pun. Not quite to grips with the car yet. He's still trying to learn the ins and outs of it, getting used to how it runs. Due to Max's 5-second penalty, Oscar pitting would have given him an automatic undercut. And I think they did make the right decision to pit when they did and put him on those hard tyres. Because ultimately I think that won him the race, which I think is why Max was so fuming at the end, which, you know what, I completely sympathise with because so would I. Bortoletto moving under braking and almost hitting Alonso. Well, he did hit Alonso, moved Alonso into the wall. Thankfully, the experience in Alonso, he was able to then overtake. But yeah, that was a bit saucy. That was coming down the main straight, going into turn 1. Williams working in tandem. So I think Alex was definitely the faster car by far, and their team orders couldn't quite come to fruition because they had Hadjar behind both of them, and then the risk was that if they did do the driver swap, that Hadjar was too close behind and he could have overtaken both of them, which would have been super sad. But thankfully, they were both racy enough that they could do a Singapore 2023 and Carlos keep Alex within his DRS to give him the DRS to keep them together and ahead of Hadjar, which I thought was a little bit cute. Charles just came alive on those hard tyres after his pit stop. He was absolutely flying and gaining and overtaking eventually George, who I think he said he was having a problem with his tyres, but according to his engineers, there wasn't a problem that they could see. Charles was just like super racy. I was super stressed at the end that Lando was going to get him. He was never quite in DRS range, but was like 0.2 off at minimum. And I was like, oh my God, Charles, please just hold on to it, mate. Like, no. That was way too stressful. But thankfully he held onto it and secured Ferrari's first podium of the year. Oscar was also reporting that there was a light coming from a balcony that looked like a red flag. I don't know what happened with that, if anything did happen. I'm assuming something was said. Norris being noted for crossing the pit exit line. Now, and I think it was deemed no further investigation because there was no one else coming up behind him on the racetrack. If there had been, the consequences probably would have been a little bit more so, but there was nothing further to investigate there. Oscar is now leading the championship. Wow. What a turn of events. He has secured the most wins so far this season, with 3. Max having 1, Lando having 1. And he also is the first Australian to be leading the championship since Mark Webber in 2010. He's also the first driver this season to take the win without starting from pole position. So that's really exciting. And big props to Oscar. Congratulations. Another exciting thing that Williams both scored points. So that is super exciting. Let's move into my predictions. So I predicted Oscar Piastri to be on pole, but it was Max Verstappen. I then roguely predicted Behrman to do better than he did last year. He gained a P7 at Saudi last year. It was debut for Ferrari, but he got a P13. So no, he did not do better than he did last year. But my delusional prediction, guys, my delusional prediction finally came true. There's a Ferrari podium. Yes! Yes, I'm so freaking excited. So happy. And that moves Charles into P5 of the Drivers' Championship. So, recap of the Drivers' Championship. We got number 1, Oscar. Number 2, Lando. Number 3, Max. Number 4, George. And number 5, Charles. Can I just say that my P1 to P5, once again, has all of the right people, just none of them are in the right spot. Again, I seem to keep doing this, and I don't understand how I can change it, but alas, I will keep trying my best. So I predicted P1 to be Lando Norris. It was obviously Oscar. P2, I predicted Oscar, but was Max. P3, I predicted Max, but it was Charles. P4, I predicted George, but it was Lando. And P5, I predicted was Charles, but it was George. I will get there eventually. Extra notes. We are at the end of our triple header. We have a little break before our next sprint weekend in Miami. So not this weekend coming up, but the following weekend. And first race in America. It's our second sprint weekend. But yeah, that seems to be all my extra notes. Thank you everyone so much for listening. Don't forget to follow along on social media and leave a comment, a review, rating, even 5 stars if you love it that much. Don't forget to follow the YouTube channel, listen on Spotify, social media, wherever you want to look at my face and listen to my voice. I don't mind, just so long as you do it. And anyways, have a beautiful day and an amazing week, and I will see you next time. Peace out.